Part of your crew today, we have Andrew on tech, and I am Lori Sanchez. And today we have One Parent's Journey, Finding My Freedom with our presenter, Mindie Bentcik. And Mindie is trained as a Parent Café host since 2015, and she's an active member of the National Parent Café leadership team. So I have the pleasure of working with her on a daily basis, virtually, but we still work together. In her professional life, she works as a tax specialist. She's a mother of 4 children, ages 13 to 20. So emerging adults, some of the toughest age that we as parents have to face. The terrible twos are nothing compared to this stage in life. So I applaud Mindie for her bravery as a parent. She currently resides in Idaho with her children, where she is an avid gardener who loves to share the fruits of her labor with her family, friends, and neighbors. Mindie, welcome.
Thanks, Lori. I'm so happy to be here. I'm a little nervous, everyone, as anyone would be being put in the spotlight. So I will be reading from what I wrote down so I don't take too many scenic routes in my story.
Well, welcome.
Are we ready for mine? There we go.
Yes, we appreciate that you're sharing your story with us. Everyone's story is important, and I'm so happy that you decided to share yours with us.
All right. Should I start?
Yes, please, whenever you're ready.
Okay. So life as I know it began as a child, raised with one parent with help from others in the family. I remember seeing pictures of those years as I was older, and up until 4, I looked pretty happy. The sexual abuse by one of my aunt's husbands started when I was 4. I didn't know that at the time was the changing point for my entire future. And the hardships and struggles I would face growing up, and the journey I would make in order to find my freedom. Second slide, please. Oh, I didn't know I did that. Do you have next slide? I don't remember the nightmare that made me wet the bed and scream out, but that's probably better left that way. I was 7 when that truth came out, and the family dynamic I knew completely changed. Also, as I was 8, I found out I'd be a big sister. My mom and I had lived in a few different places over the years, but always somehow ended up back on my grandma's property. We spent many summers and some trips in the winter trekking to my aunt's house in northern Idaho, where I swam in the Salmon River, otherwise known as the River of No Return, hiking, picking berries, actually using an outhouse, and watching the jet boat races and rodeo every spring. My favorite memory place, for sure. Sorry. Though there are also memories of willow switches and belt whoopings, the worst being the first time I talked back. I think I was around 10 or 11. I instantly knew the second whatever it was I said had come out, I took off running out the door, around the house. I remember my mom grabbing a stick out of the wood pile and swatting me with my hands covering my rear, and there were nails in the board. Next slide, please. Neither my sister, she ended up being a girl, nor I knew what a dad was. So we definitely didn't know who or where these men were. At 11 or 12, the state demanded DNA results as my mom was on welfare my whole life. At 14, my high school was sending a spirit bus to the town where my dad lived. So I signed up and went. I got there, went to the payphone, looked him up with the phone book map, and I walked 3 miles or so to his house and knocked at the door. I was also employed at this age full-time and in school at 14. I was 15 the first time I had sex, smoked pot, and eventually allowed my friends to get me to try crank and drinking. By 17, my mother decided to move to Montana after my grandmother had passed. And of course, I wasn't going. We didn't have a good mother-daughter relationship. So she left me with my best friend under her dad's guardianship. After a few mishaps with places and people around me, I also ended up in Montana and stayed with her and my sister until I could get a place. Oh, my mom and sister, I can't read my own handwriting. My mom and sister got to meet the Department of Family Services, and my sister went to foster care and was later adopted by the family. I got to admit, in a sense at the time, I was definitely jealous that she got out, and my mom was and probably still is in denial of those allegations, saying my 9-year-old sister at the time was asking for it when I was 19 when this took place. I had dabbled in a few extracurriculars through those years again as well, just having fun when partying with friends and such, nothing I got addicted to except cigarettes. Next slide, please. I ended up being an assistant manager to a mini mart, and it's here I met my kid's father. He was a repeated customer that was constantly flirty and asking when I was gonna get high or let him cook me dinner, sorry, wrong line. Yep, schmoozed me right from the get-go. So we had some fun extracurricular for the rest of the year 2000. And those fun extracurriculars were no longer touched. Oh, 3 weeks into January of 2001, I found out I was pregnant. Those fun extracurriculars were no longer touched, and I changed from having fun to mom mode instantly, just like that. But he didn't, but he still wanted us. Next, let's see, is this slide number 5? Do you know? I should have known to steer clear, since before all the lovey stuff, he had already said, I love you, and basically moved in. I should have known when he took me away from all I knew. Next slide, please. I should have known that night at 4 months pregnant, and he dumped dirty ass bong water on me in our bed and then swung it like a bat, putting a hole in the wall. I should have known when I was 8 months pregnant and bent over forwards from a sitting position. And I later knew what the deformity was in my back and what it was caused from. But I didn't. Next slide, please. In August of 2001, my oldest was born emergency C-section. This is a picture, a slide of all her. I was alone through it, as he was so high he thought I was joking when he was told I went into labor. He met her 3 days later. I was told that nursing was its own birth control. So when I was pregnant again, shock overtook me. It was during this time frame that my mother came into the picture again, and as she had conversations with my baby daddy, she informed him of how she had been paid for services rendered all those years I was sexually abused. Hence to say, she literally went out the front door at that point by the back of her shirt and the seat of her pants. But we did see her one more time. Next slide, please. My second was born November of 2002. As character as she is in these photos, she's my bean sprout. And I bailed him out of jail the night before the scheduled C-section, so he was there for hers. While I was being a mom and trying to survive this abusive life, he was gone and high more and more, but the returns of him coming back got worse. Always accusations, etc. You know, typical DV jargon. One of the worst times was he came back and I had the 2 older kids, just these 2, and he had a gun, and the kids had grabbed the gun. And as he was strangling me on the bed, my girls had picked the gun up. It was loaded and the safety was off. and the barrel was in one of the girls' mouths. And I was able to push him off long enough to say, "Kid's gun." And I don't know what power came from, but I know it came from somewhere within to save my kids.
Mindy, if I can ask, how old were you at this time?
I was 23. I turned 24 when I had Medea, so 25 when this happened, right at 25. He went to jail for some other stuff, but was out, and at that time, I got pregnant again. But he went right back in, only this time he got sent to prison. Slide 9, or next slide, please. So that's where I spent every weekend through my entire pregnancy and the first year of our third daughter's life in visitation. I was doing amazing and wanted this fresh start with him. So before he came home, we officially got married. We were a family, and he was sober, home, and started his own business. We struggled a bit, but we're doing things by the book, so to say, that when I broke my back and went through 2 years of hell trying to get fixed, this is where the deformity came in. I knew where that came from, helped cause the back break. He started stealing pain pills from me. As work slowed down, he was around the house more, and I got pregnant yet again right after the second back surgery in 2008. And my son arrived early in March of 2009. Next slide, please. Can we have the next slide, please? Thanks. We lost our business and he went back to using, but now as a 6-person family and only my work comp settlements to get us by, we moved a lot and ended up in Iowa in 2012. During those years, I allowed my thoughts to go to some pretty dark, ugly places that I'm not proud of. So when our first fight in Iowa happened, we got to meet the Department of Family Services. At this time, we were not in adequate housing. I had no license, no car, no phone, 4 kids, and lived 15 minutes drive from town. They were able to move us into adequate apartment living in town, so we were at least moved there. But then on November 3rd, 2012, after calling my social worker for help because he showed up at the door and I couldn't get him to leave and was told I wouldn't be in trouble, the department took my kids, stating I couldn't keep them safe because I couldn't keep him away. I was also taken, but it was 2.5 hours in the other direction to a domestic violence shelter and told I would see my kids for 1 hour every other week. Next slide, please. That first night there at the DV shelter, the AMAs were playing on the TV. And all of a sudden, Pink came on, acting out her song, Try, as this photo shows. And the light bulb in my head went from blown out and dark to the most brilliant LED you could ever imagine. And in that moment, everything changed. Next slide, please. I started to find my freedom. The first step was trusting the people shoved into my life, which is not an easy task. Next slide, please. My divorce was finalized in the summer of 2013, to which he was long gone back to Montana by then. And I had a lifetime restraining order, and my kids were home by January of 2012. Or 13, sorry, I wrote the wrong number. Mostly due to some other issues we had while they were in foster care, in the foster home. I literally dove headfirst into anything and everything offered to me, and I have all the certificates to prove it. Remembering with my first in-home worker making a 10-year goal to own my own home one day for me and my kids. Next slide, please. But I learned a lot along the way. Next slide, please. And my kids were thriving, and I kept them busy and involved. I met some amazing people along the way and realized that there are angels that walk among us. And if it wasn't for some of those angels, these slides wouldn't have happened. These memories wouldn't have been made, nor success for my kids' futures. Next slide, please. And I never would have found parent cafes. I never would have met Trent Shelton. I wouldn't have seen my girls go to prom, see them successfully graduate equine therapy, or spent quality time together in any way, shape, or form. Next slide, please. Almost 4 years ago now, it was time again for a change from all the past. So I packed my 4 kids, 1 cat, 1 puppy, and a 4-foot lizard into this Santa Fe and moved west to be near my dad's side of the family. Next slide, please. January 27th, 2020, I signed the mortgage to our home, in which we have been remodeling and fixing ourselves, well, mostly me, since, and have much enjoyed the camping trips in the mountains, the geysers, the hot springs, growing a garden and building greenhouses, and sharing with friends and family. Next slide, please. This summer is our 10 years of freedom. And I thought, what better way to celebrate it by sharing my story with the hopes it helps someone in some way find their freedom too. Thank you. One more slide.
Included all of your pets as part of your life because we all do. Mindie, that was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Tell me, what about the song Pink? What about those words struck you and moved you to decide?
Watching her perform on stage and being pushed down, and her continual get up and try. And you might get burnt in the process, but you still got to get up and try. And it takes every day. She gave me 4 reasons to get up every day. She gave me 4 reasons to find a job, 4 reasons to get a license, 4 reasons to get a car, 4 reasons to find me again, because I was very lost.
What do you think is the favorite thing of yourself that you found in this journey?
Just being the amazing person I am. And I never knew about the protective factors before, but they're like a Bible now, because now I see all I was resilient through. I see the support that we need to get through these battles and take our journey. And it doesn't just take friends and family, because those friends and family can't always pull you out of these dark places, especially when you've been secluded to the point that you are alone and you don't know where to turn.
Exactly. And I know you share that whenever we have our cafes. And as I said before, Mindie's part of our National Parent Café team. And so she shares how she lives the protective factors and shares them with other people in our cafes. And how does this, your life and these experiences help you when you're reaching somebody else, when you have that one-on-one conversation and you have those small group conversations in the cafes? How does that help? How do you bring your experience into
it? I've learned how to read people a little bit. I always sat back and watched for 12 years, through the 12 years of domestic violence. Even though I was accused of this and that and everything else, just looking around. But sorry, I see a comment from one of my angels that walk among us.
Well, I'll read some of those comments. I grab my glasses because I can see, but not that great anymore. Okay, from Molly Jordan, she says, "Thank you for sharing." Pam says, "Sends love." Penny Richards says, "Amazing." Andrew says, "Thank you for sharing your journey, Mindy." And Donna says, "Whoops." "Thank you for sharing. I was also a child of abuse. Know that you're an amazing person and you deserve the best." Natalie says, "So very proud of you, Mindy." Cameron Smith, "Very proud and happy you found yourself and your way for you and your family." Susana Rodriguez says, "You're a strong person and I'm very proud of you." And I say ditto to every single one of those comments.
Well, I was a
Because
parent partner in Iowa through my ordeal. So I really got to work with other families that were involved in the system and see how they were saying they were sober in court, but yet they told me right before court that they were higher than a kite, you know. So I really got to learn how to read people. So a lot of times in cafes, it really helps I kind of feel the energy in the room. And then I kind of know what to share, especially based around the questions. And then if I feel like sometimes I can get a hook, you know, like they say in songs, how you hook people in. Well, I can kind of feel out if I'm going to get a hook, and then I kind of just really elaborate. Sometimes it ends up being a 2-person conversation more than the rest of the room, but sometimes it's just I'm able to hook them into opening up a little more and expressing themselves more. At least I feel that way when I'm in cafes.
what about your children? How do you think they stayed resilient through all this?
Oh my gosh, my girls, my older, well, I have all 3 girls are working, but the older 2 have been working the longest, and their boss has commended me on their work ethics and their perseverance and just their strive for life. I go into, they were doing restaurant work, so being servers and waitresses. So just going in and watching them in action, it just fills my heart up. And they know they can read mom. So they know if mom, because I definitely have health issues now, going through everything I went through, broken back and everything else. So I've got health issues. They can read, okay, mom's off today, so let's go this route. I mean, they've just been able to be super resilient. They even were well enough knowing that once we moved here, it was a completely change of life. It's almost like a culture shock from Iowa. But they recognized in themselves that they needed to get back into therapy for a while. So they went ahead and they did it all on their own as young adults. You know, it's crazy to think how they went from, mom, I need you to do this for me, to now they're making their own dentist appointments and doctor's appointments, and they signed up and found their own therapist, you know. And I remember doing that back then for all of us and trying to find someone that would work. And that's not an easy task always. So
Yeah, you're going to share that with me, because I'd love for my kids to be able to do their own stuff without me having to do it for them. I don't think my youngest son, who's in his 20s, makes his own dentist appointments. Now I always have to be reminding him. What about speaking of the protective factors? You talked a little bit about support and concrete support, and we always talk about that, how important it is. What advice would you give to someone who is going through this and something similar and says, you know, I'll figure it out, or I'm counting on family, or I don't know where to turn? What advice would you give? Where to begin?
Well, I definitely give people that are involved with the system that end up there, because you're always in denial at first. But the more you're willing to work with them, the more you're willing to work with yourself, because it takes yourself to change. And trust is really hard to trust other people. And I'm not saying every social worker should be trusted out there, because I've seen some, that's seen both sides of that rope. But, I can be blessed to say that the day I gave my social worker my parent partner business card, we held each other hugged each other and just held each other for like 10 minutes and just bawled, both of us, like big babies. Because it had come from I hate relationship to one of just true bliss and harmony.
Thank you for that. And how do you, in that situation, speaking of relationships, how do you build those? And then moving as much as you did, how do you build a community around yourself and for your children as well?
So I'd been to domestic violence shelters before when we were still in Montana. But once I was there, I was just there in a house with 2 kids and all the support disappeared. There was someone that was there to maintain the house, but they didn't pull you in for classes. They didn't pull you in to check on you. So it was me leaving every day because you had to check out by 8 a.m. and you couldn't come back in until 5 p.m. because you had to go job searching, all that stuff. And with 2 kids, no vehicle in the middle of winter in Montana, that's definitely not an easy task. So, but I did it. And so it's just learning to trust and have that faith that the trust is going to follow through. It's really hard not to, it's hard not to open up to them once they get to that point of being able to crack your shell, I guess I would say.
You let the wall come down. You can't keep building up that wall. You somehow have to make a window or a door to let somebody in to help. And
Yes.
Because your childhood was so uncertain, and I can't fathom what you would have learned as a parent. So how did you learn to parent your children? How did you decide to parent them differently from the way you grew up?
That was exactly why I knew how to how to parent them. I did everything the opposite of how I was raised. Communication is key in my house. I didn't have that. And I remind my kids, I didn't have a mom to tell me that drugs were bad. I didn't have a mom that told me drinking was bad or that I shouldn't smoke. I didn't have that. So, and it gets put in their face. You have a mom that tells you this, so just listen. I had natural motherly. Once I found out I was pregnant, that was it. Like everything kicked in and just fell into place. Yes, I needed help managing 4 kids at that point and being a single parent. I think I got some of my OCD from being a single parent with 4 kids, needing to know what's always in my cupboards and stuff. So, and budgeting, because everybody lives out of their means. And when you get to the root of it, I think COVID had a lot with bringing families back to being families again. And so we took our time and spent it in the mountains, isolating ourselves even further. But we spent almost that whole summer of the first year of COVID up in the mountains, just off and on, weeks after weeks. So lots of togetherness time, open communication. If it didn't feel right, I didn't do it.
That's a good attitude. Is that what you tell your kids? Because I know we've had this conversation, especially now, those of us that are moms. We had this long conversation a couple of weeks ago about being a mom to adult children, because we're all learning how to be parents to adult children and how different that is.
Mm-hmm.
And we have new challenges ahead of us. So how do you now try to parent your adult children? How has that changed? Are you still learning?
It's turned more. So all the years of them growing up, I was not their friend. I was their parent. I didn't allow that friendship until now that they're young adults. I've switched it. I mean, not that I wasn't friendly to them, but we just didn't hang out like pals. It was a mother-daughter and mother-son situations. And we did things as a unit. No, I just lost my train of thought. Sorry. What did you ask me?
We're talking about how remember we had this
Oh,
conversation, and it's been a
yes,
heated
yes, yes.
conversation about adult parenting adult children.
Oh, yes. Now we hear more than I want to hear because we've kept those lines of communication open. And the older two are in relationships. Definitely didn't expect to hear some of the things I hear. Um, I did have my third daughter has come out as a lesbian. Well, she's bisexual because I still think she's still feeling the grounds, but she's talking to a very nice young lady now. And so that was an adjustment all in its own as well, being raised with the old school morals. Um, and so, but it's been a learning and growing experience, I think, for all of us. And having the older two, now that I'm hearing things come back to me, I'm like, oh my gosh, they did hear me back then. Because now they're spouting things out. Like, for instance, my older two and my younger two seem like they had grown up in two different worlds, because the older two saw and heard and saw and were around more than the younger two. And the younger two have more consistent stability from a younger age. And so now the older two will come over and they'll be like, Jason, why haven't you cleaned your room? And I just hear certain things, the way they speak to the younger two. I'm like, oh my gosh, you sound like me. And so it's kind of scary, but it's like, yes, they did listen. It's sunk in.
It's always gratifying to know that somehow your words got through. And you
Yes.
have 3 daughters and 1 son. Is there
Mhm.
any difference in how you're raising your son?
I am lost. I say I know why God gave me a boy last, because if he would have been first, he would have been an only child. So he had started in utero being a problem at 3 months, starting with gestational diabetes and insulin starting at 3 months, to coming out as a preemie. But they tore my spinal cord. So I had leaking spinal fluid. Then all the caffeine they were giving me, I ended up with kidney stones right after a 4th C-section. So I was in the hospital longer than he was in the NICU. This boy walked at 7 months. We had half decorated Christmas trees. Like, the girls, I didn't have to put nothing up. I didn't have to lock cabinets away. The boy comes through, he's climbing counters at 6 months old. Like, it's completely different. It's hard to be both mom and dad to a boy. I think it's easier to be both mom and dad as a female to a girl. But I try to make things as normal. I said he's either going to hate women growing up, or he's going to just be like a very in tune with his feminine side, being raised in a house with 4 girls. But I think he's doing pretty well. He's made it to 13.
He's a 13-year-old, right?
Yep, he just turned 13 in March. So another nostalgia year. My oldest turns 21 this year, and my baby turned an official teenager. So no more toddlers and adolescents in my house, and tweens.
Your house is just filled with that age group that is the most difficult, I think, because they're coming into their own, and they're not easy to pick up and put somewhere. Like when they were 3, they were asking you all those questions. Like, just sit there and we'll figure out, here's a lollipop. Their attention goes somewhere else, but it's not that easy anymore.
And the other big difference is with the girls, it was everybody come hang out here. Like, I always, especially in Iowa, like, everybody came over after school. I always, have you eaten today? Because I knew some kids that didn't have the best home environment that my kids were friends with. So it was always eat at Mindie's. Everybody called me Mama Mindie out there. And now that I have a teenage boy, I'm like, I don't want all your boys here. They have smelly feet and they just permeate out of the bedroom.
There'll be one meal.
I definitely noticed the difference.
Thank you so much for sharing all that. It's been such an interesting journey for you, and getting to know you a little bit better. I'm honored that you were able to share that with us. So thank you so much. And we have a few minutes left, so we'd like to open up the microphones. If anybody has questions or comments, if you'd like to share anything with Mindie, please raise your hand and Andrew will open your microphone. Any comment? that you'd like to make? We have Leonard who says, "Well done, Mindy," and virtual hugs from Amani. What, as a going through all that, what would you say if you were able to go back and talk to your younger self? What would you say to yourself? Would you ever have believed back then that you were gonna come as far as you have, that you were gonna make it out of that situation? Because I know how difficult it is when you're in the middle of all that. Um, Having grown up in some difficulty myself, it's when you're in the middle of it, you just don't see the end. There's no way out, and you have nobody else to count on except you. What would you say to yourself if you were able to look back at your 25-year-old self and say something?
Listen to your red flags. I see them now. My girls bring someone around and I'm like, bye. Like, I can see it right off. Nope.
And because you do cafes so weekly, and we talk about the protective factors all the time, and you tell us that they're your Bible, which one resonates the most with you?
I think resilience, just that ability to bounce back from a situation. For a short while, I had my brother living with me when he was going through his divorce. And he doesn't know all my past because we didn't grow up together, and doesn't know my story in depth, just the basics. But he came out one day and he goes, no matter what you go through and how stressed you are, you always have a smile on your face. How do you do that? And I'm just like, why get stuck in the downs? Like, I was down for so long in some very dark places, incriminating dark places, like bad. And I don't want to ever see that darkness again. And so for me, it's to radiate resilience in a positive manner, because I don't want my kids to ever get stuck in that. I don't ever want my kids to have to face anything I've ever faced. We always want better for our kids than what we had. And that's my goal, is to just give them what I didn't get. They have a mom that loves them and will die for them, you know. Hope I don't ever have to for them, but because I want to be around for them. I mean, I was an avid smoker for years, and I found out last fall I have COPD, and I instantly quit because feeling that suffocation, not worth it. My kids are more worth it.
Your strength is commendable. And Pam says, I commend you on your resilience. Blessings to you and your family. What's one last thing you'd like to say? Because what do you see for yourself in the future?
I do see some health issues with the back situation. Chronic pain is never ending. I've already been walking around with a cane lately with this colder weather that we have here, because we got snowed on this weekend. But just let your light shine. No matter how dark of a place you get, don't let that light go out. Let it shine. It'll get brighter. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel. And I just heard my daughter say it back to me yesterday, that, you know, you never want to I used to instill this in them. And then she said it to me yesterday, and she goes, never make a permanent decision to a temporary problem. And so I really stick with that a lot. It's just, it sticks with me a lot. And I have a humanity sign that hangs right over my fireplace. It says, if you planted hope today in any hopeless heart, if someone's burden was lighter because you did your part, if you caused a laugh that chased a tear away, if tonight your name is mentioned when someone kneels to pray, then your day was well spent. And so
That's a great way.
I just radiate resilience.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing this. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate being able to call you my friend. So thank you today, everybody, for joining us. Andrew put up the ending poll, so if you would please answer those few questions and let us know how we did with today's webinar. It's how we're able to bring you more content. And let us know how you heard about Be Strong Families webinars in our cafes. Today we are hashtag amplifying finding freedom. So please put in the chat what you are amplifying today. And I know Andrew says hashtag amplify resilience. And I would like to say hashtag amplify. Let me see if I can put this in myself. So please use the chat and put in what you would like to amplify today for our Amplify campaign. If you want to amplify love, friendship, amplify strength, amplify faith. Amplify believing in yourself. Yes, thank you. Amplify love. Thank you so much, Mindie, again. Please continue putting it in the chat, what you amplify. And as we move forward, please remember that Be Strong Families has our Spring into Vitality campaign. Join us as we gather the focus of community wellness and growth on our website at bestrongfamilies.org. You can click on take a picture of the QR code there and join us online. Donna says, Mindie, reach out to me, please. Our stories are very similar in childhood, and I also have back pain. So please continue putting it in the chat. This Friday, we will have our Taste of Vitality cafes. If you want to continue having a conversation with Mindie, she's usually on our Friday cafes. This Friday will be Life is Not Picture Perfect at 12 noon till 1:30. So we invite you to join us. That is not a recorded session. We want to respect everybody's time. And so we don't record those, so we can have those very private one-on-one conversations, small group conversations. And you can register at the bit.ly that's there in the chat that Andrew put in, or at bestrongfamilies.org. And you can take a picture of the QR code if you want to join us on Friday. Next, Andrew. We have our webinars every Monday and Wednesday in English, Staying Strong and Positive for Ourselves and Our Children, and in Spanish. I am on those on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So en español, los martes y los jueves, manteniéndonos fuertes y positivos para nosotros y nuestros hijos y hijas. So join us either Monday, Wednesday in English, or Tuesday and Thursday in Spanish. And then Fridays, of course, we have our Friday Cafe. So you're welcome to join us for all of those. We thank you for joining us today. We appreciate your time. You can always see this and any other webinars that we have on Be Strong Families on our YouTube page at Be Strong Families channel. And you can subscribe here using this QR code. And here's the bit.ly if you want to find us. Thank you so much for joining us today. Mindie, you did great. Nothing to be nervous about, even with that tech issues. Thank you all for joining us today. Have a great day. We hope to see you tomorrow in the Spanish webinar, and we hope that you'll join us Friday at our Taste of Cafes. Have a great day.